What's going on, Action Army?
What's happening, guys? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the official Action Army show.
Welcome to the most important hour of your life this week. If you're not watching this show, you're probably a Jackass or a Lion's Den fan.
Yeah, guys, it's basically a fucking call to action. Just kidding, it's exactly what it is, okay? This is the intro to Call to Action, the single most important piece of content you're going to ingest in the next 7 minutes.
If you love Action Army and you love Ben and Drew, then this is the place to be. And if you don't love us, well, then fuck you.
Go buy a suit, get it fitted, get the pants tailored so the length is just right and the break of your pants looks fantastic, get a bottle of Jameson, and get on fucking board.
Peace out.
All right, welcome everyone to this new episode of the Call to Action podcast. I am hosting today, haven't been on for a while. For those who are just tuning in or started watching the last few episodes, my name is Michael Samblas, and we have with us two other individuals. Danny, why don't you say hi to the good people out there?
Hey, good people, how's it going?
And with us, we also have who else?
Hey, it's Melissa.
All right, and we have a very special episode for you guys today. To cap everything off in a bit, you're going to see an interview that Melissa and I conducted with one Andrew Ghai, who you may or may not have heard of. But before that, we're just going to recap a couple of Inner Geekdom matches that were all the worse for not having team action in it. I know, we're kind of coming off their big match last week, but we had some interesting stuff go down in the Inner Geekdom division this week anyway, which we're going to talk about, as well as a Patreon match that we just got to watch today. So let's start with Hector Navarro versus Adam Flavik. Danny, let's start with you. What did you think of this match overall?
Well, I'll get into my notes later, but overall thoughts, it was the very first time that former teammates, formerly the original Superhero News, faced off against each other.
Former teammates, yes, but it's important to note that we
it.
have had current teammates face each other.
Yeah, but I'm saying these particular ones.
Okay.
This is the first time they met each other, the individual. But if you notice that Hector was representing Geek and Sundry, while Adam was Hyper RG with Cameron was the hype man. It was I think Hector kind of was just going in there kind of laid back, but Adam showed that he wants to be taken seriously, and it was a pretty good match, I think, for Adam. Hector, I think he seemed kind of just like he was just whatever. It could be just because he hasn't been there for a while, but I don't know.
How about you, Melissa? What did you think about this match?
I thought the match itself was fine. The one kind of takeaway I had from it was, now I know Jay Washington has been in the Inner Geekdom, and he's kind of like I don't know. He's not a full heel. He's just kind of an annoyance. And it seems like this is the first time we're getting like a full-blown heel attempt in the Inner Geekdom division. Whether that was a choice by Adam himself or whether it is, the part of the showrunners to sort of create maybe some more storylines for the Inner Geekdom division. I think that'll be kind of interesting to see how that all plays out. The storyline itself was interesting enough, having kind of two friends, former teammates, kind of competing against each other. And Hector seemed to kind of see it as a friendly gentleman's game. So seeing Adam come out as kind of the villain was very kind of interesting to see what that might have that implicates for further matches.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is, we do have to honor the OG Inner Geekdom heel, and that is Robert Meyer Burnett. He was kind of the trailblazer in that regard, I believe. But you are absolutely right. We haven't seen a big heel presence in the Inner Geekdom League. It's mostly a much more jovial affair. But I was a little weirded out by the choice to make Adam the heel, because when you really look at their conflict, it's Hector who abandoned the team to join John Schnepp, apparently without telling Adam. Hector has kind of been neglecting his teammate. So this kind of brings me back to JTE, how when you look at the old episodes of the Schmoes live show, like, they kind of treated him like crap and they bullied him a lot. And so it's no wonder he became a heel. I feel like Adam's in that same place where, yeah, he's the heel, but let's not let Hector off the hook here, because he is kind of responsible. This is a monster of his own making here.
Agreed.
Danny, what's your takeaway on this new kind of heel dynamic coming from Adam Hlavik? He seems to have a kind of a manager of his own. Do you think that we might see more of this rivalry down the line? Would you like to see more of this rivalry down the line between these two former teammates?
I mean, if it takes a little more seriously, I think so. Right, I think it was kind of like you said, it was more like a friendly match on part of Hector. But maybe if he's gonna try to fight his way to get back into title contention, that would be a nice little rematch for him. I wanted to say something real quick though. I was impressed with Adam's movie release dates, and something else said that he's like the Scott Nance of Inner Geekdom. He got almost every single question right. I think the only one he missed was the Harry Potter question in the year of 2009 for the Order of the Phoenix. So
that's a category though that they're
so,
gonna have to retire very soon, because there's a very finite number of questions in that category. So I don't see that being around for much longer, unless they start asking for like the month of release of movies or something like that. I also do have a strange gripe that I'm going to get to in a minute, but Danny, you had a couple notes on this match. So you were saying about his performance in round two, Adam's performance. What else did you kind of notice about the questions they were getting right, questions they were getting wrong in general?
well, just to recap, at the end of the round one, it was a 6-6 tie. Then when round two, Hector kind of did a little mini rock, paper, scissors, and time ran out. So naturally, Adam spun. Then after that, Hector spun Middle Earth, and then he respun again. And Adam, he got opponent's choice, and Adam chose Middle Earth. But that proves that his inexperience to the game, because it wasn't really Adam's strength either. So maybe next time he'll know to try to pick something that he can try to get more steals out of. And then by the third round, Hector was making a comeback, and the 5-point question was the X-Men composer. Now, I'm not sure if you would have gotten that question right, because I didn't. I wouldn't have gotten it, but so I'm not sure if it's 5-point.
Yeah, I guess my big two takeaways from this were, one, Hector Navarro was made champion at a time when the Inner Geekdom League was much smaller. I don't think that he is quite the top tier player that people like Jason Inman or Rachel Cushing are. And my other big takeaway is, from now on, I don't want to see any more rivalries predicated on former teammates having a falling out. Not that it's a bad storyline, it's just an overused storyline. We saw it with Rachel and Ken. We saw it with Finstock and Makuga. We have seen it with As faction-wise, we saw it with Roca and Bibiani, and now with Hector and Adam. I think, and even with Burnett and Schnepp, that's a plot device, a contrivance that I don't need to see anymore. Once again, there's no example of it I've outright hated, but it's getting old. So that's just something that I'm starting to feel at this point. No complaints about this match in particular, just I'd like them to try new things when it comes to generating rivalry. Melissa, what more specific thoughts did you have about this match? What big takeaways did you have? Did you come out, thinking anything differently about either of these competitors or about the Intergeekdom League in general?
Well, I tend to agree with you that Hector kind of won the championship in a much weaker league. And I think with the Intergeekdom, it's one of those things where you either have to have like a really broad knowledge, kind of like Jason Inman does, or you have to get really, really lucky. And, you have to know a lot about a select number of categories and then just get really lucky and spin those categories or run into those categories in round 3 or things like that. So with Intergeekdom, I think people like Jason Inman and Rachel Cushing are beatable if their opponent gets like absolutely like the luckiest they've ever been. So, I mean, I don't count Hector out completely. I think he can go like on a string of good luck, but I don't necessarily think he has the motivation to hone his skills, to learn those categories that he's not necessarily well versed in. I think he's perfectly happy kind of knowing what he knows and trying with what he already knows, and he's fine with that. So, I mean, he's great to have around the Intergeekdom, but whether he's championship caliber or not, I kind of agree that he may not be at that tier. Adam, I don't know enough about him to know whether that is the same for him. But it is really cool to see someone kind of new to the Intergeekdom that might be able to become a staple in the Intergeekdoms. It's nice to get those new staple players rather than the last few like Fatal 5-Ways we've had. We've had like a couple of people come out here and there, but a lot of the competitors have don't have a lot of stickability, if that makes sense. I think Adam actually kind of has that presence that he could be a Intergeekdom factor for a while. So the only other thing I would have is just to kind of throw it back to you, Michael, is would you make an exception for Christian Harloff, Mark Ellis?
With regards to them having a rivalry because as former teammates?
Right.
I once again, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I would roll my eyes a little bit, to be honest, especially when we've had so many of these things. We've already hit half a dozen of those kinds of storylines. We can see Harloff and Ellis have a friendly rivalry. Listen, each one clearly would want to beat the other because they're competitive people. I don't think we need to fabricate some sort of "you betrayed me" storyline to make that exciting. It's, once again, a crutch we've seen leaned on so many times that I don't think a Harloff-Ellis match really needs that. I think just, make that more of an old school match. Take it back to the original tournament where it was just a couple guys playing trivia. I do want to say, as we close out our recap of this particular match, which was a solid match, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the kind of mini storyline we had in the rivalry that developed. I do think that Hector suffers because, and we're going to have Andrew's interview with us here soon, and he talks about how the best competitors are the ones who study and are fans of the game. Hector is not. Jason Inman very much is. Jason studies the game. He looks at the categories that he's not good at and studies those. Same way Sam Levine has gotten much better at animated, Jason Inman has gotten much better at things like Middle-earth and Star Wars that he might not have been the best at originally. That's really what's holding Hector back. That's what makes someone like Jason Inman, someone like Rachel Cushing, even someone who doesn't have any wins in the inner geekdom like Mike Kalinowski, much better competitors in my opinion, because they actively work towards improving their own game. Now, with that said, before we move on, does anyone have any final thoughts on these matches, or this particular match rather, before we move on to the Fife-a-thon, as Danny called it, before we started taping?
Nope, let's move on.
All right, so it was a Emma Fife-filled affair, as we had her versus Janine for people who are not patrons, and then we had her versus Jay Washington. Let's start with the Janine match. We're all fans of Janine. We're all big supporters of the machine. And I think we were all happy with the outcome of this particular match. Why don't we start with you, Melissa? What were your expectations going in here, and how did you feel going out?
No real expectations for this particular match. I thought it was kind of random, but I think it did kind of work out in that it did kind of promote the Fife Club Viper Squad rivalry that they're trying to push. So when Janine initially challenged her, I thought that was kind of a really odd choice, but I kind of now see the big picture of it. Round one had me a little worried because, I mean, there were some questions that both of them missed that I was like, oh, this is going to be a long match. And, luckily by round two, Janine seems to have turned it around. I think towards the end of round one and going into round two, Janine really kind of came into her own on that and made it a much more entertaining match than initially it looked like it was going to be. Couple things that come to mind real quick before I let you guys talk is I do find myself curious about, all these little moments, like what do they mean? Such as Emma not wanting the rest of her faction there, but then Rachel ends up showing up anyway. Is this going to be something or is it nothing? Then at the end when Janine wins and Harloff made kind of a weird comment about why Jay wasn't celebrating with her. That was kind of a weird comment, like what might come of that. So there were like a few like weird moments in this match that made me wonder, like, okay, what are they setting up? What seeds are they planting? But yeah, like you said, I was pretty happy with the match as far as like the results go.
Yeah, I mean, let's call it what it is. Nobody performed well in round one. That was really unfortunate. And I think that, Emma, by her own admission, this is not her league. While Janine is a rookie, she's just starting out, and she's, I think, still struggling with some of the elements of the game. As you said, Janine did much better in the second round, and I think Janine also, her biggest move was actually after the match. I think her, because if we're being perfectly blunt, the Viper Squad, while they're undefeated, there's a reason why people aren't kind of shouting their praises in the same way they're talking about other factions. It's because they've mostly had easy matches. Stacy has, she beat RB3. She was 3-1 and played him at 0-1. And then, she was 2-1 and she played him at 0-1. And then she played Makuga, who is a top 10 competitor, but as far as top 10 competitors go, he's not exactly the most formidable. And then you've got Janine, who has played Bonnie and now Emma. Going after Andraco is a big move because they need big wins, and you see that also in Stacy going after Rachel. They are looking for big wins. I think they're starting to recognize that these tiny victories aren't getting them anywhere. They're not getting them recognition, and they're not getting them very far in the rankings. So I think going after someone like Mark Andreyko, who is a terrific competitor, is really, really a bold move. However, based on her performance today, I'm very worried about her going up against Andreyko. I don't have the most confidence. I want to have more confidence, but I think she's going to need to practice at round 1 before taking on someone like Andreyko, because he is a really scary opponent. What about you, Danny? What were your big takeaways from this match?
I mean, for the most part, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. Emma in round 1 had 4, and Janine had 6, actually. So, more or less, it's kind of about the average. But, again, it's also kind of, some of the questions seemed a little bit easier. But I guess round 2 was really where she kind of got a pretty substantial lead when she got romantic comedies. So,
which is a big
she
strength to have, by the way. Like, that's a really solid category to be good in.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of other competitors, I think, that's their strength. So it's good to have something that she can make like her trademark. And then Emma almost made a comeback, but Janine kept the win and got the TKO. But as you're saying, I like the fact that the Viper squad is going for the kill. Like, they're going to make their strike in the league, going for like the top competitors, calling out Markia just joining and wanting to make her debut, calling out Rachel.
That's a bold move as well. That's what I
Janine.
think they should have been doing from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, yeah,
I want
the
to see
issue.
that.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a great match. I do want to bring up the fact that the issue with round 1 here wasn't necessarily how many they got wrong. It's the questions they did get wrong. Looking at this round 1, this should have been pretty easy to get a perfect round in. And Janine has never tanked a round. She has never, like, absolutely bombed. But in both of her matches, there were 1 or 2 questions that she really should have gotten. And against people like Bonnie and Emma, that's not a big deal because she is just a much better competitor than they are. But against someone like Andreyko, those kind of easy misses could be the difference between victory and defeat. And she's got to kind of close those gaps, especially seeing as they're so easy to close. That's my big worry here. But romantic comedies, that's so huge because there are so few people who are good at that category. Having that on the wheel all the time is always a strength. So I was really impressed with how she did in that category. Anything else to add, either of you?
Well, yeah, I kind of agree with what you said there, because when it comes to Andreyko, Janine, I mean, it's going to go one of 2 ways. Either the questions are going to get much harder, like Andreyko level, or the questions are going to be kind of at the same level they have been, and he's just going to, I mean, he's going to run the table with it. I would be shocked if he didn't do well with the kinds of questions that were there today. But if you dial back to Andreyko, Ben, those are the kind of caliber questions that Andreyko is used to. And I think if they throw her into that kind of match, I think it could be a real struggle.
And remember, Andreyko is one of our strongest round 1 competitors. We don't think about it often because he doesn't get that many, 8-point rounds. But when you look at his free-for-all performances in both free-for-alls, he answers a ton of questions correctly in those. He did great against Ben. The questions he gets are really difficult, and he answers most of them well. We still remember his debut match as one of the highest scoring of all time. So she's in a dangerous position where the places she's weak are the places that he's strong. However, if she beats him, she'll be maybe 1 victory away from a title shot. She'll be close. So it's a really great move. It's a really bold move. I like it, and I'm really looking forward to that match because it'll be awesome. Any final thoughts?
No, other
maybe
than
we should talk about.
So you go ahead, Danny.
I was gonna say, I want to talk about the stinger about Kalinowski, and how instead of the Fatal Five, why it's gonna be the 16 tournament. How do you guys feel about that? Do you like the idea of it, these matches meaning more than just like a little? These being what I'm trying to say is like these having some meaning.
I'm gonna say something that might ruffle a few feathers. I don't like it actually. I have said this before. I don't know if I've said it on air. I'm not a huge Inner Geekdom fan. I think that the league in general kind of overprivileges geek culture a little bit. It's kind of failed to spotlight other aspects of the film community. And this is something that I bring up in our interview with Andrew briefly. But I think that now we have this many matches in the Inner Geekdom that's taking away from the singles league, which has a lot of great players who don't play in the Inner Geekdom, and it's taking away from potentially opening up special matches and special events in other kinds of categories that I would like to see instead. I don't need an Inner Geekdom tournament. I like it being this tiny niche thing. I also like the raised stakes of the Inner Geekdom. If you lose an Inner Geekdom match, you might not get another one for a year, which I kind of enjoy. I'm not like boycotting the Schmoedown because of this, and I get why they're doing it. I get that the fan base is riled up by it, but considering that the Inner Geekdom has never been my wheelhouse, and considering that there are a lot of kind of parts of the cinematic ecosystem that I love that are not represented in the Schmoedown at all, I'm a little let down by how heavily they're continuing to lean into comic book movies and Star Wars. I still, that said, understand the decision, though. How about you, Melissa? How do you feel about this?
I actually agree with you. I'm not a fan of the tournament idea. Couple things. You know, originally when they did the Fatal Five Ways or Four Way, I think maybe the original one was a 4-way. I'm not sure, but those were gangbuster. Like, people were loving them. Like, they were just so entertaining. They were so fun to watch. It was like nail biters every single time. And then like the first Fatal Five Ways of this season, they were kind of letdowns. Like, they were just not that entertaining. And so I think the Fatal Five Ways have sort of lost their luster, but I think they could be, I think they still could be great. So I'm not a huge fan of the tournament, especially, a lot of the discussion, and this was even last season, was the Inner Geekdom only has so much material that it can explore. And eventually it's going to run out. We've already seen them add some categories, Indiana Jones, James Bond, Back to the Future, things like that. We've already seen them have to add categories. And so to have a tournament, how they're going to be able to, use that much material and have the Inner Geekdom be able to continue, I don't see. They're either going to have to go real deep cut questions, or basically the Inner Geekdom is going to have to dissolve because there's just not going to be enough material to sustain it. And then, when they said 16 teams, like, I think my jaw dropped, or 16 competitors. I think my jaw hit the floor because, college football does not have 16 teams in their playoff, and they could actually legitimately sustain a 16-team playoff. So to have 16 competitors in the Inner Geekdom tournament, that just seems like way too many. It's either going to be the first few matches are going to be lightweight matches, or it's just gonna be by the time you get to the finals, it's gonna be burnout. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it either.
Yeah, I mean, it just starts feeling like, instead of the movie trivia Schmoedown, we're the pop culture trivia Schmoedown, where we're, kind of overprivileging the films that happen to be a part of the zeitgeist at the moment. I'd like to see different niches get explored in that same way, that maybe have a broader appeal, that maybe have a wider variety of questions. Uh, Something that people have been talking about forever that there isn't much traction on right now is a horror league. You have so many competitors that aren't just like decent at it, that could crush in horror. And I'm not a huge horror movie fan, but I would just like to see different kinds of movie fans have their particular passions spotlighted, instead of the same ones. And so my big apprehensiveness here comes from the fact that uh, these matches are going to take away from other kinds of matches, both in the regular singles league and in other kinds of formats that we could see. And that just bums me out a little bit. I'll definitely watch all these matches. I'll definitely follow this tournament. I would just rather we've gotten something else. Let's we've talked about this particular match for a while, though.
Well, just one final point.
Yeah, go ahead.
One final point that I wanted to make. Yeah, like, I agree with both of you guys, and that's kind of like why I don't understand why we have a Star Wars as well as the Inner Geekdom. So,
Well, I think on the rundown, like a year ago, William Bibiani put it the best. He's like, the reason we have a Star Wars belt is because the people who make the Schmoedown love Star Wars, and that's great, and I appreciate that. But let's have maybe leagues that maybe reflect the tastes of other people as well. That's all I'd like to see. I'm sorry, keep going, Danny.
yeah. So, like, I just see it's going to be oversaturated. I think having so many Inner Geekdoms week after week, one or two Inner Geekdoms matches a week, and there's a lot of other players that aren't in the Inner Geekdom that I want to see play again, like Ethan and some of the other that aren't necessarily highlighted as Inner Geekdom. So I wish that we would get more attention to seeing a lot of those players come back.
And you raise a great point about all this new talent we're not going to see for a while. And listen, I am positive that the Inner Geekdom has a huge fan base that is over the moon about this, and I'm really excited for those people. I just wish that we had other fan bases that were getting that same level of attention, and I think we all feel that way. So moving on to another Emma Fyffe match. If you are a fan of Emma Fyffe, you are probably thrilled with these matches, because she also faced off against the manager of her previous opponent, Jay Washington. Danny, why don't you start us off by running down this match and giving us your thoughts?
Jay came into the match 1-1. Emma was still looking for her first win. Round one was uneventful. I think that was a really horrible first round. I think it was like 4 or 5. They got very unforgettable. Round two, Emma got very lucky. Let's just say she got her spinner's choice, and then round three, Jay made a kind of a close match, but Emma got the win. That was pretty much just the overall view of it. Out of the matches that we've talked about, this was my least favorite one, if I'm being honest.
And why would that be?
And I'll bring it over. I just didn't. These are two of the, I would say, the two of the weaker competitors, I would say. And also, again, because it's an Inner Geekdom, it just kind of and like the rivalry and the storyline behind it, it's just kind of like a little bit boring to me. So I didn't really have much of a interest in it, to be honest. Only until like when it got to the third round did it start to kind of be a little bit more interest to me. But seeing the first round was really painful, in my opinion.
How about you, Melissa? How do you feel about this match?
I think probably about the same as I'll let you speak for yourself, but Danny, just a little bit underwhelmed. I think it kind of goes back to what I had mentioned earlier in that there are some inner geekdom players that have a very broad knowledge, and there are some that have very specific categories that they're excellent at. But, they may only be excellent at maybe like half or less of the categories in the inner geekdom. So it makes for a rough match when they get categories that they're not necessarily good at. You look at a round one where the categories kind of run the gamut, and they'll get maybe about half the questions right. And then if they get into a round two situation where they don't get the category that they're necessarily good at, it can get real boring real fast. And kind of same with round three. Like if you run into a category that's just not in your wheelhouse, that's why having those broad competitors make the inner geekdom so much more entertaining, because otherwise you have these competitors, a lot of them, like when they get Star Trek, for example, they're almost useless at it. And it really kind of, it makes the entertainment value just kind of disintegrate in front of your eyes, because it's just so like low energy, boring. And I think that's kind of what we got today. Now, as far as like Emma round two, she did get her preferred category, and to her credit, she did much better this time. She has gotten Harry Potter previously in the spinning round or in round three, and she's missed some pretty easy questions. So she did do much better this time around than she has in the past. But I mean, honestly, but in round three, when Jay was up one, I mean, I literally thought to myself, he could win this, because if she gets three categories that she doesn't know anything about, which could happen, legitimately, it could happen that she got three categories that she didn't know anything about, he could win. So, I mean, I guess that did create some sort of suspense to it, but yeah, that's about it.
I do want to say, kind of in these competitors' defense, and in the defense of all Inner Geekdom competitors, you're also under a lot more audience scrutiny in that particular league, because most of the Schmoedown's audience has major gaps in their film knowledge. But those gaps lessen significantly in the Inner Geekdom, because so much of the Schmoedown fan base identifies with geek culture and is a huge part of that and really knows those movies. We have a ton of Potterheads in the Schmoedown community. We have a ton of comic book fans in the Schmoedown community. A ton of Star Wars fans. There wouldn't be a Star Wars league without that. So when you miss questions in those categories, people are going to come after you. And so these weren't great performances. But I think we need to put these in context. We've also seen a lot of other bad performances that people didn't give people a hard time for, because they're in categories that the fans themselves aren't very well versed in. The issue with the Inner Geekdom, and maybe also the reason why we shouldn't have so many Inner Geekdom competitors and keep it a more elite league, is because it definitely is a league where a lot of fans could hang in it. And so it's much harder to take certain competitors seriously for a lot of fans, because a lot of these fans say, well, I genuinely could beat that person, which is why I would like to kind of maybe keep it a little more towards competitors like Inman and Cushing and some of these people who could really, really show their knowledge on a different level. So anyone else have any other thoughts on this match? the repercussions of it, the general outcome. I personally, think that Emma kind of trounced him a little bit. She really did deserve the win. She might not be the best Intergeekdom player, but she really secured this win fairly, and she outplayed Jay. And that's basically my big takeaway here. This was a pretty open and shut case. Anyone else feel differently?
Nope. It was just a smart move for Jay to put the challenge.
Absolutely.
The successful challenge. That was
Yes.
one of the few times where somebody used the challenge correctly. So
Well,
I
I
just want
wanna-
to take note of that.
When it comes to challenges, I want to shout out, because nobody's really talking about this. Jeff Snyder is the master of the challenge. You want to learn how to use your challenges correctly, and there are exceptions. He messed that up in the Patriots last match. But if you want to learn how to use challenges, study Jeff Snyder's game, because he is an expert at that. So, are we all about wrapped up with the recaps for this week's matches? Anyone else have any thoughts on this week?
Yeah. Nope. All we had was the stinger afterwards about Kalinowski talking to Roga. So that sets up possibly him either joining the Horsemen or maybe starting a rivalry where he may wind up joining somewhere else, like a new faction or maybe even the Lions Den. But
And Kalinowski joining the Horsemen could lead to Roka going heel again, if he decides to make kind of a more aggressive faction than Top 10 has been the past year. But we're going to end on that, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to say about Kalinowski and about Top 10. One person who does have a few things to say about Mike Kalinowski is Andrew Ghai. When we interviewed him, Melissa and I, earlier today, we're going to play that right now. So please enjoy this awesome interview full of amazing insights that Andrew Ghai gave to us, coming up right now. Welcome, everyone, to the Call to Action podcast. We are here with one fine, upstanding young gentleman who you all know as Dastardly Drew Ghai. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I don't think anyone's ever described me as that ever in the movie Trivia Schmoedown, but I like it.
Yeah, well, there's a first time for everything, including this past week where we had the first time that a face as well regarded as one Mike Kalinowski fell quite as far as he has. So we have to start because this was your big return. This was the moment that if everyone hasn't been waiting for, then everyone should have been waiting for. Action's return. How did that feel? I want to start with how you felt going into the match, and then we're going to talk about the big fallout from that match. So what did you know going in? What were the stakes to you personally? And how did it feel to kind of start, get back on that horse again?
For me, coming back to the game, coming back to the MTS was really about reestablishing myself as a half of Action Army, as being a good teammate to Ben. I had two of the worst matches of my life in the tournament against ATL and Top 10 2. So anyway, what I was saying is that I just needed to reestablish myself. And so going into that match, it wasn't that I didn't underestimate DC Movie News. I think that Kalinowski and Gertler are both great players, and we've seen them do incredible things. I mean, you saw Kalinowski in round 2 against us with James Bond, but we were never worried about them. They were just in the way. They were just a stepping stone on the way to the Shower Wolves and on the way to the belt. Now, I don't know why we thought that way. I don't know if it's because we just hadn't been around for so long, but it was one of those things where it's like, look, we're going to come back and we're going to kick ass because that's what we do.
And kick ass you certainly did. I'm curious a little bit about the challenge that you issued to them, because we have several events leading to this match. First of all, we have you guys confirmed to play the Shire Wolves. Then you guys make another big power play and decide to finally give Kalinowski the match he's been looking for with you this whole time. And then we get this ridiculous stipulation that Christian tells us that implemented, though I'm not entirely sure who the really big mover there was, that if you lose this match and the Shower Wolves, you guys have to break up. What was your, so I guess we have a two-part question next. One is, what was the logic in making both of these challenges? And the other is, what was going through your head when you found out that this could be a breakup situation for you guys?
I don't think logic had anything to do with it. I think those two jackasses that run the movie Trivia Schmoedown were just bored. I don't know what they were doing. I'd just been banned for 3 months, and I come back, and my very first match, you're like, all right, let's try to get rid of them for a year. Come on, man. Action, we sell tickets. We sold out the live event. No one else is. I mean, I know there's only been one other live event, but the Warriors didn't do it. Roka didn't do it. JTE didn't do it. Team Action did it. We sold out the fucking theater. So for us, it was one of those things. It was a slap in the face, man. It was so disrespectful to Team Action Army, which is one of the biggest fandoms and factions in the entire MTS. It made absolutely no sense. Now, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I want to interject there because while we're on the subject of disrespect, and I want to still get your input on why you challenged Kalinowski in a minute. But how do you feel about the fact that in all the fan polls, you were leading for heel of the year last year, and you still are by a heavy margin to this day, yet you were not nominated for that position at the Schmoedown Awards?
I know, man. I know. That was so ridiculous. And I think because, well, first of all, I wasn't even allowed to be at the awards, so that might have been half of it. I was not allowed on the press. I think because we won Heel of the Year and Heel Team of the Year, that they just decided to spread the wealth. But I think it's just a bunch of political BS. I should have won Heel of the Year. Ben and I should have won Rookie Team of the Year. ATL sucks, and we also should have won Best Heel Team. I was happy about that.
Yeah, it was a hard ceremony to watch for all of us at the Action Army. I can assure you of that. So back to our previous point, why DC Movie News and why the Shire Wolves? Why those two teams and why in that particular order?
I think it's to do exactly what I did to Dan Murrell, which is make people forget about them, kill them, end them. We've beaten a few teams now, and we've played a few teams that have disbanded or that are no longer in the league because we beat them so badly. And I want that to happen to the Shire Wolves, just like it happened to DC Movie News. Because with DC Movie News, I don't know why the two of them thought that they actually had a chance with us, and they've been coming after us for so long. Ben said it the best. He's like, we've won more matches than they've even played. Like, why are you doing this to yourselves? So, we wanted a little warm up, especially for me to get back in the game. Ben's been playing it, and we figured who better than to spend a piece of Team Action ever since they've been in the league, and I needed a warm up to go into the live event. And so that was my thought with DC Movie News. Now, when it comes to the Shire Wolves, I have a problem with this because when Ben and I joined the league, we were given absolutely no credit. Now, people didn't know who we were, and Clark and Rachel have already had their run in the MTS on different teams and in singles, but they're still a new team, okay? You can't put all the best people in the world on a basketball or football team and just expect them to win. I think a great example of that is if you look at the NHL playoffs right now, the newest team in Vegas is in the Stanley Cup Finals, right? That is something that is unheard of, but the reason why is because they played an incredible season together, a full season together, and they learned the ins and outs of how everyone plays. Rachel and Clark have played one match together. They have no idea about each other's strengths and weaknesses in a match. Now, you can look at it on paper, but when you're sitting under the lights and you're sitting there with 600 pairs of eyes staring at you, I guarantee you they're going to wish that their best friend was sitting next to them, and they're not. You know who's sitting next to them? The rookie who they recruited last week and they played one match with. That's who.
Yeah, as a Miami Heat fan, I feel your sports analogy very painfully with regards to getting all the best players in the league and it's still not somehow working out. And I totally agree. And I think that one of the things that's really distinguished Team Action is how well you and Ben play off each other, not just with regards to your trivia knowledge, but with regards to your chemistry and your co-strategizing.
For sure, man. I mean, the Vegas team, like I said, is filled with players that every other team didn't secure. These are people that were all expendable to other teams, which I already know that most people think I'm an expendable player in the league. But when you get Ben and I together under those lights, we are a force to be reckoned with.
And we've already seen this trend in the Schmoedown where the most knowledgeable player is not always who ends up champion. We see that with how the run that Sam Levine has had, for instance, while players like Bibiani or McWeeny have struggled a little more because maybe their strategy is not up to where their trivia knowledge is. So how do you feel you approach situations against teams that maybe have someone like Rachel Cushing, who is such a formidable force, or someone like top 10 or above the line who you've played before? How do you approach those teams that have just a stacked team and you guys go and kind of being the underdogs, younger players, maybe have had less time to watch movies, and yet you still put up a really great fight against those teams, if not outright winning in many instances?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things where like everyone's going to count you out other than yourself, especially against teams like that. And the worst thing that you can do for yourself is get in your own head, like I did against Above the Line. I talked about this on the Schmoedown Rundown last week, I believe, and I, you know, Ben and I have learned a lot from watching the game, and I truly believe that Sam Levine plays the game better than anyone else. I think his strategy and gamesmanship in the game is above all.
100%.
And I think for me, especially in that Above the Line match, I should have slowed down. I should have taken a couple repeats in the first round once I got upset about that Army Hammer question, and kind of just like reasserted myself in the game instead of kind of like playing catch up for the rest of the match. You know what I mean? So when it comes to things like that, strategy aside, who cares? You know what I mean? Like in the sense of like thinking about the other team going into the match. They are a non-factor because no one talks shit like we do. And that's the only thing that can get in your head during the match. So if all we're playing are these face teams that are just, you know, good players, it's really just about a game with yourself. I don't have to think about what Rachel or Clark or Sam or Drew are going to say to me, or Nost are going to say that's going to get in my head, because their trash talk is garbage. It's almost like laughable when they try it. And when they do try it, it almost like brings me back into the game, you know, because I'm like, oh, they're trying to play my game right now. Whereas their game is just movie trivia. Stay away from what I do. You know, I do both. You do movie trivia. That's your thing. So with these matches, all it is just you got to be calm, cool, collected, play the game like you know how it's played, use your rules when you need to, your JTEs, when you need to, use your challenges when you feel it's right, and, you know, play the team action game. Don't play the Shire Wolves Above the Line or top 10 game.
So we're going to have Melissa enter the conversation here because Melissa and I, actually none of us really have had too much time to talk about this match that happened recently with DC Movie News. So Melissa, what was your take on the match? What was your reaction to it? And do you have any questions to Andrew based on the outcomes of that match?
I think something we kind of all talked about, and you kind of hinted at it, was just to find out what you guys are thinking of the Mike Kalinowski. I don't know if it's a heel turn or just like lone wolf turn or whatever it is, but
it's an act of desperation, I call it.
Yeah. Okay. And then also, just like what we've seen on social media is that the talking points from this match seem to be all centered around like DC Movie News and Kalinowski and kind of the whole situation there. And I guess I'm wondering what you think that match, that the talking points have not been on you guys. Do you care? Do you does it motivate you?
So the thing with Mike Kalinowski turning heel is Mike's always been a heel. He's just been a wolf in sheep's clothing. We've said it since day one. We've always thought he was a heel, and we were just waiting for it to happen. So honestly, like I said, welcome to the dark side, brother. But then the next week happened of Mike Kalinowski being a heel, which the extent of Mike Kalinowski being a heel is being a Facebook troll and then opening up a thread on Facebook and the MTS and answering like 400 questions that people are asking over a computer. Like, are you kidding me? That's you being a heel? And that, like, okay, I'm going to be a Facebook troll. I'm going to talk shit to the team that just destroyed me. I'm going to pick on who I think is the worst player on the team, me, even though I scored more points than him. He played the best match of his life in round 2 and 3, and he still got destroyed. So, like, little babyface is just kind of learning how to be a heel. He doesn't know what he's doing yet. And the fact that the talking points are all on Mike and not on us, I don't really care, because Christian put up the poll the next day again about who's the biggest heel, and Mike got 40 votes, and I got 500. I don't care. Mike Kalinowski is an afterthought in me. And finally, when he came after an Action Army member, which you don't come after our fans. I ripped him apart on Facebook. He got outclassed, outdressed, outplayed, outvoted. Move on, dude. You're embarrassing yourself. Pick on another team. Action destroyed you.
On that note, when it comes to turns, there's a trend that I've noticed, which is that people only make face or heel turns after one big loss or several losses in a row. We have never seen a turn after someone has been winning, because when people win, they feel comfortable doing what they are, and when they lose, they figure, hey, maybe it's a change. Roca turned after losing the three-way at the Collision. Kalinowski turned after 8 losses in a row across all 3 leagues. Knapsack turned after losses in the Nerds Watch. So who do you anticipate being the next person who is going to make that transition, who maybe is not having a great season?
I like that question. That's a good question. I honestly don't know. I mean, like, thinking about what you're asking me, I think, you know what, maybe Stacey Howard, because Ben and I talked about how she's now 4-1 in the league, and the matches she's played, the last 2 matches she played were kind of a joke. So I think for her to be 4-1, and now because she's still kind of a heel, right? Like, she's trying to be one.
Yeah. Well, she's with Jay Washington.
Right, in the Viper squad. I guess what happens is she's going to play a real contender. She's going to lose. Jay's going to talk a lot. She's going to play another contender. She's going to lose again, and then she might leave the Viper squad and go back to being face. Maybe rejoin Brienne. Maybe they come out face. I honestly don't know, because the season's been interesting. Like, we've had a lot of new players come in the league. We've had some people come and go, and then a lot of the newer personalities that are in the league seem kind of muddled in the middle instead of picking a true heel or a true face side. And I think that that's kind of a mistake on their part. I think that when you come into the league, you really have to have a clear idea of what you guys are. And I think that actually adds to the theatrics of a heel face turn, which is why I think I'm having a hard time answering the question, is because, like, I haven't seen any teams where I'm like, oh man, this would be crazy or cool if this happened. It's just like, okay, which is why Kalinowski's was a great thing, because he'd put in the time. He'd been this ridiculous face for about a year, and him and DC and the MTS had put in the work to make his heel turn, validated. Whereas, like, right now, I think if another one happened, it would just kind of seem out of place.
Yeah, I really like your take on that, actually, because I'm personally a big critically acclaimed fan, for instance. And Bibiani has made a kind of face turn, but it happened almost off screen. He kind of just one day showed up, and it wasn't a turn so much as it was like some kind of behind the scenes decision almost. And I like the idea that you've got of just totally leaning into the theatrics. If Team Action ever turns, which will never happen because you guys are never going to lose quite that often, but that would be a big momentous occasion. And I also like what you bring up about a lot of the new talent, but I do want to bring up who's debuted in the previous year are you impressed by?
In the previous year, or in this season specifically?
You know what? I will include people who might anyone this year, plus maybe Lon Harris, because he debuted at the very end of last year.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Janine, I love that Janine has completely owned the heel persona, and I think that she does it to an 11, which is exactly what you're supposed to do in this league. I love the fact that whether or not she's still so new that a lot of people don't really care, and I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean that it takes a while for people to catch on and actually pay attention to what you're doing. She's got another match coming out today, I believe, for everyone else, or for everyone to see, not just the patrons. So I think it's going to help her star. But I'm a big fan of Janine the Machine because she's a heel. She does the trash talk. She dresses up. She's been a fan for so long. She's at all the events. Like, I truly believe that if you want to be good at this game, you have to be a fan of it as well, which is why teams like Top That don't deserve to be in the league. If a team gives another team...
Don't deserve to be in the league at all, really?
No, not at all, man. Like, if you give... No, They gave top 10 biopics. They gave them biopics. That
true.
is the biggest mistake you can ever make playing against John Roca, ever. Not even Westerns, biopics. And it's like, if you did your homework, then you would know. And that's the kind of stuff that really bothers me, because a lot of us put in a lot of time and effort into this. When we play someone, we study them, we learn their weaknesses, we learn their strengths. I even know what most competitors that I play against, what numbers they pick in the third round. Why? Because if I want to, I can pick one of their numbers and fuck with them, because that's the way you play the game. But if you go into a thing thinking you can just like, oh, I watched a lot of movies growing up and I'm going to put on this thing and I'm going to go out there, and it's not the same thing. It's a disservice to everyone that you play against. It's a disservice to the people that run the league, and it's a disservice to the fans. Do your homework, because the fact that all the fans are sitting there watching it and they're like, what are you doing? It's like, why are they on my screen then? If I'm a fan and I would play the game better than you, not just being like, oh, I knew that question, but like giving a team their strength, that's just it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you do raise an excellent point, and maybe culling the ranks a little bit would mean that we get team action more than every 4 months or something like that.
Seriously, dude, feels like it's been forever.
Yes, the man's trying to keep you down. So we do have the live event coming up.
Yeah.
Melissa, what are you anticipating at this event? And do you have any questions for Andrew directly pertaining to this thing that's going on?
Well, one of our call to action mates, James, is going to be there, so there will be an Action Army person there in the audience to support you guys. I guess one question we have is, because our last call to action podcast, we pitched your entrance. And have you guys talked about the entrance yet? Are you just gonna wing it? Do you guys have big plans? What's the plans for that?
So we've got a couple things planned for our entrance. I mean, it's not going to be anything too crazy, but we are going to spice it up a little bit for the live event. I don't know if you guys remember the last live event. They have they have a live pre-match promo on stage, which Ben and I are really excited about. Yeah, I mean, for us, this is where we thrive. In front of 300 fans, 320 fans, that is the best place for us to be in. So as much as it would be cool to do like this crazy big entrance with all these theatrics and stuff, at the same time, it's like, why don't we just come out and do what we do? Look good, play the game well, and put on a good show for our fans. Now, I know in the beginning we used to do like more like themed entrances and stuff, but honestly, after we were done with those and we kind of just started coming out as just action, just coming out ready to play the game, not to be bothered by anything, it almost feels more true to who we are as a team. And I think it honestly, it gets in our opponent's head a little bit, because it's like, whatever, you guys are here, we're going to win. But it's really about us.
Yeah, and also, why bother to do themed entrances when half of those are going to be snubbed for the Schmoedown Awards as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They're not going to give us any love, so why put in all the effort? And honestly, like, I don't. I'd rather just wear a suit, do our thing, do the team action thing, than like find costumes every 2 weeks or 2 months,
Yeah, just a quick multiple choice question that I do have to ask you is, what insult is the lamest that you get often given? Kmart suits or multiple choice army?
God, they're both so bad, which I think is a testament to the factions that they follow. And it's like, oh, wow, look at our team. Look at top 10 and our insults about Kmart suits. I think we've heard that 100 times from every single person out there. First of all, are Kmart's even open? Second of all, do they sell suits? And third of all, why is that the best thing that you can come up with? And then as for team multiple choice, that came from a match that we won. It was when we beat top 10 the first time, and it was because we checked to multiple choice numerous times to play safe, and we won. So I think team multiple choice is the worst thing, because it just doesn't really make sense, in the sense of like, that name spawned from a match that we won using that as a tactical advantage. So I just think it's just a bad insult.
Now, we've talked extensively about the singles or the team leagues mostly, but I want to talk about the other leagues in particular. Right now, we've got kind of the beginnings of a mini Intergeekdom tournament going on. So, another two-parter. One, do you think that there's a chance that Action will have some kind of representation in the Intergeekdom League at any point, or any other league, which leads to a kind of tangential thing is, would you like to see any kind of special matches with other kinds of leagues? You know, the Schmoedown gears a little too heavily towards the geek stuff, in my opinion, and there are not a lot of other kind of sections of the movie fan public that are represented. Would you like to see maybe an action adventure only match or something like that?
Now that could be interesting. I see what you're saying there. Now, the thing that I do understand with the Inner Geekdom is they're just like much more specific questions down a rabbit hole that like you're not going to go down in a normal match.
Yeah.
Whereas with other categories like action, and I mean, you've seen it, they've gotten real deep and dark. You know, like they've gotten real weird, obscure action questions because it's been a category that's been spun so many times.
Well, that's how ATL stole from you so often in their matches. You got asked a lot of 70s action questions that were kind of more in their wheelhouse than yours.
For sure. And also, like, Ben and I got in our own heads about not playing the game. Like, you know, when that From Russia with Love question got asked, we know who's in that movie. It's just, you know, it's the fact of like, John Rhys Meyers or Travolta, and we just didn't play the game right. He said veteran. If we heard veteran correctly, we would have just been like, oh, it's Travolta. But since we were trying to outsmart them and outsmart the movie Trivia Schmoedown, we went for the harder guess, which is, John Rhys Meyers. And then obviously they're like, oh, well, Travolta. And they steal it, and same with, I think, Backdraft and other things. It was just one of those things that, like, that's why checking to multiple choice is always smarter if you're not 100% sure, because half the time it's an easy steal. And the other half the time it's if they are going to steal it or you are going to get it wrong, it's one less point instead of two. If we would have checked a multiple choice on that, they probably would have said Travolta and Myers in the multiple choice. We probably still would have said Myers, and we would have only been down 1 point instead of 2. It would have been a 1 point swing or a 2 point swing instead of a 4. So I think I'm happy with it how it is, in the fact that it's like Inner Geekdom and those things are in that league, and the deeper that those questions go are going to stay away from the traditional MTS. And I think if you create more like separate factions or separate trivia shows, it's just going to kind of get crazy. I do think they should do more like special events with the same MTS questions or in the same Inner Geekdom. I saw a post on the Facebook group about 5-ways and 3-ways and Iron Man matches and just things they used to do in wrestling with like cage matches and things like that. I think that would be a better way to go.
Let's see, a Team Trek Star Trek battle, for instance, would be, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Keep going.
No, that was, it's just something like that.
Yeah. So I do have a couple of closing questions. Before we do that, Melissa, do you have any other questions that you would like to ask Andrew?
Yeah. Are we good with silly questions now?
Yeah, anything you want. This is I
Okay.
think we hit the major beats.
Okay, we got 2 questions for you that are a little kind of less Schmoedown, more just your personality.
Okay.
One would be, and I don't know if you picked the nickname or if the powers that be Christian picked it, but if you could give yourself a nickname other than Dastardly, whether it's kind of a specific, like Ben's is the boss.
Right.
Do you have something that you think you would lean into a little bit?
It's interesting because when Christian announced me as Dastardly the first time, I was like, huh, okay, that's cool. And
so you weren't told of that beforehand?
No, I think I forgive me if I'm misspeaking. I doubt Christian is going to listen to this anyway, although he should be listening to this. Everyone should be listening to this. But if he is, maybe he can correct me. But I'm pretty sure he had said, I have thought of a couple names for you and Ben. And he's like, I think he threw Dastardly out. And I was like, it sounds great. But it was one of those things where I don't think it had been truly established. I think he kind of tried it out in the first match, because Ben's changed too from, it was like big time and then the boss and then big time and then the boss or whatever. I think it went back and forth a couple times, but like for me, after the first match and like the next promo, I think it was pretty solidified in my mind that Dastardly was kind of perfect. Now, that being said, if I could change my name after going to jail and killing Dan Murrell and all that, I think it'd be pretty sweet to call myself the Divine One, just to be a dick. Drew the Divine One guy or something like that, just because it would make all those Murrell fans even more upset that I like am referring to myself in that level, because I love getting into the heads of Murrell fans. It's so
or take his own dangerous Drew guy.
Yeah, that's even better. I should just be dangerous. That's amazing.
Do you have another one, Melissa?
Melissa's not happy about that.
No, I think that's great. Next question. If you were to get a Schmoedown themed tattoo, whether it's a phrase, a picture, whatever, what would you get?
Oh man, if I was gonna get a Schmoedown tattoo, what would I get? These are great questions. I think I would have to get a "Where's the Belt?" Right? Like I would have to get "Where's the Belt?" And man, where would I put that? That wouldn't just be so ridiculous. I don't even know. Maybe on like the side of my foot, so no one ever saw it, because it would be one of the most ridiculous things for me to try to explain ever. They're like, what does that mean? What do you mean, where's the belt? And why do you have that tattooed on your arm? And I'd be like, well, I do this movie trivia league where I'm kind of a bad guy and this is our catch. It would just be like a ridiculous thing. But I do love where's actually, you know what? Action Army might be better. I think I might do an Action Army tattoo. And then I don't know where I'd put it, but I think I'd like that more because I love the Action Army. It is like my favorite group of people ever.
It is our favorite group of people as well. So when you win the belts, do you think it's going to be still "Where's the Belt" as kind of a rhetorical question, or are you going to switch over to "Here's the Belt"?
I know. I've been thinking about that because it's going to happen soon. And I love the "Here's the Belt," but I think it would be even better for us to just keep yelling "Where's the Belt" when we have them, because it would just make everyone so mad that already doesn't like our catchphrase. And then the fact that we have it and we're still asking about it would be so Team Action of us. So I think we'll probably just stick with it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's pivot over a little bit to talk about a certain young man named Ben Bateman.
Yes.
Who is making a bit of a name for himself in the singles league. He does have a negative record, but his matches have you cannot accuse the guy of going after easy matches. He challenged Mark Draco, who is maybe one of the most underrated competitors in this league, and he played him to a standstill. He has played some great matches here. He almost took that 5-way. Looks like he wants to challenge Scott Mance, who, despite his record, is another really strong competitor. Yeah. What do you see in Ben's future in singles?
I mean, I think everyone knows that Ben is an incredible competitor. He really is. The guy knows numbers better than anyone else I've ever met. And whether it's, I mean, now it's movies, but it used to be sports. I think Ben's going to win the belt one day. I don't know when it's going to be. I could totally see it happen this year as long as he goes on the run that he wants to. I mean, both those matches that you lost or that he lost that you mentioned, he knew the answers to those questions and he outplayed himself. He should have checked a multiple choice on those two that he lost to Andraco, and he would have gotten them both right. You know, he knew Zeus and the Billy Bob Thornton one. He knew that as well. So it's one of those things where you get in your own head. And for Ben, you know, if you listen to the rundown, that's the match for him that's like my above the line match. It's the one that you just can't stop thinking about at night. And when you wake up, you know, you just made some misplays. And so I think Ben is a powerhouse in the league. I think most people know that. I just think for him to win the belt, all he's got to do is up his gameplay a little bit when he's under the lights, and he'll have the belt, man. Definitely.
Yeah, not having you with him probably destabilizes him a little bit since he's so used to you guys as a team. But he is almost certainly going to make a run for it soon. I do want to talk about.
I want to speak on that really quick when you say that, because I've actually, you know, they've been pushing for me to do singles, and I probably will this time. I mean, this year. But I did realize when I was playing DC Movie News, because I hadn't been under the lights for so long, and the last thing that I'd done was a free for all, and like, you know, I'd taken so much time away from the league that like Christian and I had been talking about me joining singles, and I liked the idea of it. And again, like I said, I probably still will, but I remember in that DC Movie News match in the second round after Kalinowski went, and then, you know, after we went, we got Sci-Fi and we were tied going into the third. I just was like, thinking, man, this is just so fun to be doing this with my buddy. You know, this is my best friend. All theatrics and team action bullshit aside, like, there's 4 people up on this table. They're all my friends. We're having a great time. And there's something about the team aspect of it that I just love so much more than the singles aspect. I think it's the camaraderie. And like, obviously it's nice to have someone up there to take the heat off of you. But like, I just don't see anyone having as much fun in singles as they do in teams. And like, it just is not as appealing to me because it's like, I do this because it's fun, you know? And, I think that, yeah, I think it's totally true that Ben maybe got in his head a little bit because we weren't both up there. And, you know, the same thing happened for me in the free for all. So as much as I like singles, I just love teams so much.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of give a direct address to any top 10 or non-team action fans who might be hate watching this episode right now, because I think a lot of people don't realize, because they see Andrew Ghai's performance on screen and don't realize what a devoted member of this fan community that you are, and how loyal you are to your teammate and to the fan community. So I would implore anyone watching this to reconsider their position on team action and try to separate the kayfabe from the great guys that you guys are outside of the Schmoedown.
I really appreciate you saying that, man. I truly do. And it's one of those things where it's tough, you know, and I think Kalinowski's getting a big taste of it right now online, and you see it. When you become a heel, it opens up the floodgates for everyone to hate you and talk shit to you. And like, that's all he's been dealing with online. And it's definitely exhausting. And honestly, you know, after the matches, sometimes, you know, you feel like your friends are upset with you because you're such a dick and you beat them. You know what I mean? So it's tough. Kayfabing is one of those things. I love it. I'm an actor. It's one of the things about the Schmoedown that I love the most, but it is a little brutal when you see all these people that just think you are the scum of the earth when you're just doing your job.
Yeah, well, and that's another observation that I've made recently, is that all of the best performers in the Schmoedown either are or have been heels at some point, because I think it's a much harder part to play, and I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, totally. I 100% agree that a heel is a harder part to play, because also you've got to be entertaining as a heel, or else you're just an asshole, and no one likes an asshole, you know, and I think that's why the heels in this league have all, you know, done pretty well in their heeldom, if that's a word, because, you know, none of them are actually bad people. They're just doing a job. But I truly believe being a heel is much more difficult because, I mean, even if you want to break it down to coming out to cheers or boos, that can get in people's heads immediately. And that's just like one of the smallest details that is so prevalent.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Melissa, do you have any parting questions? Because I have one or two to end on, but if you have anything else, because we're running low on time.
Yep. Nope. You go for it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, of course. Again, you guys are the best fans in the world. Like, the Action Army is the greatest thing ever. The fact that you guys created this podcast, you know, I've listened to a couple of them. It's just amazing. I love you guys. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I guess our final question regards, yeah, like you mentioned, your own singles career. We've got some guy named Mike Kalinowski calling you out repeatedly, who seems to have forgotten that he lost pretty handily to you, including in round one. Do you plan to accept that challenge? And if not, who might you see yourself facing off against, possibly in an attempt to anger Mike Kalinowski with your refusal?
I love that question. And to answer it, I will never play Mike Kalinowski again, unless it's for him to take the belt from me when I have it, or for me to take the belt from him when he has it.
He's got to work his way to you, right?
He's got to earn it. He's already said it for a year, and then as soon as they lose, he tries to like say it again. It's just regurgitated nonsense. Like, you haven't earned it. You can't just go into the league and say, I want to play Sam Levine because I want to be the champion. Sorry, dude. You just can't. Like, if we hadn't ever played each other and I had been like calling you out and all this other trash and you wanted a piece of me, then it would make much more sense. But you lost to me a week ago, calling me out in singles when I literally just beat you in round one by myself, round two with a category that you gave us. It's just, it just seems redundant to me. So no, I'll never play Mike. I'd rather play Gertler or LaQuasta just to fuck with him.
Yeah, your scene with LaQuasta, by the way, was fantastic. You really,
His pregame gave me nightmares. That was like some of the most terrifying game spitting I've ever heard in the Schmoedown.
so what do you see as so who do you see as alternatives to Mike Kalinowski? Who do you see yourself cutting your teeth against? Maybe a newbie, or someone that you've had your eye on for a while that you don't think is as good as they think. Um,
A lot of people have been talking about me playing Matt Nost just because of kind of our rivalry. Now, as much as I like that, I just don't think it's going to do the right thing theatrically. I think for me, it's got to be against. God, I don't even know. I'd say Stacey Howard, but she's just so far up there now with her 4-1 that it would be ridiculous for me to challenge her. Maybe Jay Washington, just because he talks so much trash and he's not that good at it. He just yells a lot. But then again, the match might just be like way too much testosterone at the table. But I'd love to play Jay. Jay's one of my favorite people in the league and outside of it. So I think him and I would have so much fun doing that. I think that'd be a cool match for both of us. And I sit there and watch matches with Jay a lot, and again, the lights can do a crazy thing to you. I know he's not the most respected player in the league, but the dude's got knowledge for sure. And I think it would be a fun match for both of us. And I also think for the entertainment of the league, Viper Squad, Action Army, it would just be like a fun match. Or actually, you know what? The other one is Makuga. I would love to play Makuga or Finstock because I love those guys. It would just be so fun to be at the table with them.
Yeah, that would be a really, really good one. I think it would be super weird, but you and Burnett would probably be a strangely good match.
I love our Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We don't want to keep you here any longer, but we really appreciate your coming on to this show to talk to us. We're not a very big show. We don't have a sizable viewership, and the fact that you decided to talk to us really speaks to your character a lot. So we'd like to thank you for that.
Yeah, of course, man. Again, you guys are amazing. I love the Action Army. If there's anything else you guys need to ask me, shoot for it. And then, hopefully after we beat the Shirewolves and go on to our championship match, we can sit here and talk again about us either having the belts or about to win them.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope to have you guys back soon. Melissa, any closing words from you?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, thank you so much, and we hope that you have a terrific match. As of this recording, the Shirewolves match is tomorrow. We will all be rooting for you. As we mentioned, one of our own hosts, James Spence, will be there. He was the guy with all the signs last time, and he is saying that he's upping his sign game for tomorrow's match.
I can't wait. I'm a big fan of James. I saw his sign last time, and hell yeah, man. Action Army for life, and let's destroy the Shirewolves tomorrow. Where's the belt?
Absolutely. Where's the belt indeed? Thank you very much.
Yeah, take it
Good
easy.
luck.
All right. We would like to extend our thanks once again to Andrew Ghai for giving us that interview. He was really honest about a lot of things, as you guys can clearly see, and we really hope to have both him and possibly Ben on this show again very soon. So with that, we are done with this episode of Call to Action. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting the show. We are a small operation, but we like to think that we are important part of the Schmoedown community nonetheless. So with that, my name is Michael Samblas. You can check out my thoughts on film at deathofcinema.blog. And I also am going to let my co-hosts sign off here. Danny, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at DKPKP. That's DKPKP. Or on Instagram at Danny_K22.
All right, Melissa, what do you got?
You can find me on Snapchat, Melyn44, MELYNN44, and then you can find me also on the MTS and Action Army Facebook page. And then don't forget to check out Ben and Andrew's socials as well. Danny, do you have those off the top of your head?
Andrew Ghai on Twitter, and Ben Bateman Media, both on Twitter.
Yes. And there's a show you all should be watching called Action Movie Anatomy. If you can't get enough of Team Action on the Schmoedown, they do a whole other show once a week. So if you're not watching that, what the hell are you doing watching us? Watch them first, then come here. That is all for our show. Thank you so much once again for supporting us. This is Call to Action, signing off.
Bye.
Later.